I would like to invite our panelists on the stage. We're about to begin. My name is Anna Zelentsova, a strategic coordinator of the Russian Ministry of Finance's project promoting financial literacy, financial education, and represent the Ministry of Finance in the relevant G20 working group. I'm honored to moderate this session. Allow me to introduce our panelists, those that are already on stage. More people will join in a few minutes. They were delayed in the government. So let me introduce the ones that are already on stage. As is the tradition, we started at the plenary session yesterday. On my left, immediately, is Dmitry Yanin, chairman of the board of directors CONFOP, National Confederation of Consumer Societies. Alexander Kolankov, advisor to the head of the Consumer Protection Services. And for ensuring the accessibility of financial services of the Bank of Russia, with two people in charge of consumer rights from the regulator and the civil society. Next is Elena Kuzmina, head of the Regional Center of Financial Literacy of Tomsk region. Tomsk region is one of the 9 pilot regions of the Ministry of Finance where we work in financial literacy. Elena will give us regional perspective. Then is Vladimir Potapov, head of VTB Capital Investment, head of the brokerage services and senior vice president of VTB. And Georgy Gorshkov, first deputy president chairman of the management board Postbank. So the banking community is represented by leading financial institutions. The topic we're going to be covering today. Oh, and I need to introduce Guzeli and Maya. Guzeli is head of the national agency NAFI. They do sociological research and polling in Russia. The topic we're going to discuss today is financial education, financial literacy in digital age, risks and possibilities. This is the title of this session, and had we been talking a few years back, those risks and possibilities were not as prominent. Now we see that change is happening dramatically, change in digital technologies, and it is difficult for regulators, for the state, those that are in charge of consumer rights protection, to keep track of all technologies that emerge in the financial market. On the one hand, it opens up new opportunities. Financial products become more complicated, more consumer-friendly. On the other hand, we see that today you can lose your fortune in just one click. There's more fraud, new types of fraud, and according to the Bank of Russia statistics, the number of digital fraud is growing. Recently, Central Bank published interesting statistics that people that are subject to fraud, vulnerable to fraud, becoming younger. In the past, the older generation was the most vulnerable to fraud, and now, as cybercrime gets more prominent, the younger ones become target. So how should consumers navigate those dangerous waters? Because digital technologies, on the one hand, make our lives easier, but on the other hand, we now need to think of protecting consumers, make sure that they benefit from new technologies and avoid risks. Well, I'll ask our panelists to share best practices from the regulatory point of view, from the educational point of view. I'll ask the business community to talk about what steps they take to protect consumers. We have statistics. G20 is very active in this field. They've come up with a high-level set of principles on digital financial inclusion. There are many data to show where the world is going. But what is the situation in Russia? I want to give the floor to Guzel Imaeva, who will update us and give us fresh statistics and on how things stand with digital in Russia. Good day, colleagues. It's a pleasure to see many familiar faces. Those of you that don't know me, I will repeat, I'm Guzel Imaeva. I represent the Analytical Center. I've been doing research of financial behavior of people for over 15 years. If you could stand in the center for the audience to see you. I don't want to comment on whether digitalization is good or not. I'm not going to talk about its benefits. It's clear that digitalization is changing the landscape of financial market, opening up new channels of communication between financial institutions and consumers. My presentation is going to be full of statistics. I will share results of research we did in the beginning of the year. We polled top managers of major financial institutions of Russia. 22% claim that in the next 2 to 3 years they will be reducing the number of their branches, banks and insurance companies. I don't know if my presentation will be published online. Yes, we promise we'll publish it online. So we find ourselves in a new reality. Physical presence of financial institutions is shrinking. They're going digital. They're migrating various financial apps, and Russia is among world leaders in terms of development of digital technologies. I'll give you an interesting example. We're keeping track of best financial practices globally, and recently in the US, Apple Card was launched. That allows you to request a digital card. You see your internet bank where you see your web bank online, which they think is a breakthrough. But we're spoiled by financial technology. We've been using those technologies for many years now. And if there's a big bank in B2C, it should have a mobile bank or a web bank or an app. It's a bare minimum that customers expect. By the way, major banks allowed to publish stories in their mobile apps. Most are dedicated to financial literacy. And just yesterday I was reading about hobbies that are free of charge. For instance, noodling is one of them, where you fish with your bare hands. And it's interesting. It's genuinely interesting and entertaining. So we've come a long way as compared to many in the world. And that had impact on our consumers based on Russia-wide research. We can say that about 20% of grown-ups never go to branches, and they say that deal with all matters online. 31% go to branches less than once a month. 2/3 of people use mobile banks or web banks. Mobile apps are much more popular. 11% use touchless payment, and 3% use smartwatch and bracelets. 43% people think that it's much more efficient to manage finance digitally than through traditional instruments. Only 8% of Russians opt for traditional methods. Another parameter which speaks volumes for most say that digital finance is faster, easier, and more transparent. We do a lot of research on financial literacy, and if we try to measure correlation between financial literacy and willingness to use web apps, usually there's direct correlation. More people that use digital usually more financial literate, but they don't see all risks. Risk perception online and offline is just taking shape, and 45% think there are no risks in 35% say there are no risks in digital, or they're at similar level with the offline. We study digital literacy a lot, and young people really financially literate. They feel at home online, but when it comes to safety, they've misperceptions. For instance, they say it's more open and flexible online, that online is easier and faster, and that in itself creates risks. What conclusions can we draw? Digitalization is happening, it's a reality, it's generating significant impact. But when it's easy and fast, it opens new doors for fraud. And we see abroad that people are trying to understand what is digital financial literacy. We've been working on financial literacy for 10 years. We're all professionals on this stage, but we're witnessing a new emergence of digital financial literacy as a new concept. We're still working on the definition. We're still trying to draft competences, because unless we do, we will not be able to assess all risks and opportunities or base educational programs on it. I'll give definition that I think is most relevant. It was developed by the Asian Development Bank. Digital financial literacy is awareness of digital financial products. And it's a translation you need to understand. And we don't mean just mobile banks or web banks, but chatbots, robo-advisors, and other services, online insurance, online borrowing, crowdfunding, and many other things. Another interesting component is ability to identify digital financial risks and ability to protect, safeguard against them. There are many risks, from phishing, framing, profiling, but it's really genuinely dangerous, not to mention social engineering, where people use your fears and trust to commit fraud. Ability to protect yourself, protecting your personal data, because in digital environment, your personal data is your main asset, something you need to protect. Otherwise, it will open doors to your finance. And third component is knowing what to do to protect your rights in case they're violated in the digital. So these are the three components, and this is what we'll focus our work on in the future. We know what digital literacy is. So how do we marry digital literacy and financial literacy? Our think tank has been working on it for 3 years. We're a member of the DG Competences Council of Europe framework that works on digital literacy competences, and we measure this parameter, and we see that it's going up. In 2 years' time, we went from 52 out of 100 to 60 out of 100. Is this Russia? Yes, it's Russia. But you need to understand that digital literacy very often is considered as computer literacy alone, which is wrong. It's not about whether you know how to turn your computer on, off, download a file. No, it's broader than this. It's fact-checking, its ability to understand content and analyze it, its ability to use social media and messengers, understanding threats and challenges. So we've done a lot of research which you can use for your research, for your practical work. When we talk about digital, there are many pros, but it comes hand in hand with the digital divide problem. According to our estimates, about 33% of population are among those that are left behind, that don't have access to financial services, to digital financial services. Why are they excluded? There are many reasons. 57% say they don't need to use them, so they choose not to participate. And this is something we need to study. This is becoming a global phenomenon. For instance, if there's enough physical infrastructure and you have enough opportunities to use digital, but you choose not to. And it can be due to low financial literacy, to cultural, religious beliefs, or negative past experiences. We know of a woman who is about 60. She tried to pay online some services, and then she paid. For some reason, the payment didn't go through. And she said, I'm not going to use it again because I don't trust the service. And this was her own decision. She made a choice not to participate. Lack of mobile devices, psychological barriers. Very often people say, I feel I'll make a mistake, I'll press the wrong button, I'll click the wrong icon. So how can we encourage people that don't use digital? So first, of course, is help, assistance of relatives and friends. Second, people need to buy a smartphone, because a quarter of people that don't use digital don't have a smartphone or a tablet. Detailed instructions. And this could be a recommendation to financial institutions, training courses, or bonuses that would encourage people to give it a try. So financial literacy and digital financial literacy is a new phenomenon in the global education. And when we talk about digitalization, we often hear you need to work on your financial digital literacy because there will not be room for all in the future. So we need to deal with the problem to make sure no one is left behind and there's room for everyone in the digital future. Thank you. Gazelle, I have a quick question.
Yes, you said that digital literacy has not yet been defined. What is digital literature? At the same time, we do have a project titled the digital economy. Does this document cover digital literacy, or is it yet to be defined and elaborated? Yes, it is yet to be done as part of the national projects. We certainly keep a close track on that, and as far as the literacy is concerned, we account for that. We also include financial literacy as far as the use of public services is concerned, but no more than that. So we need extra efforts and extra cooperation to improve financial and digital literacy in the population. So this is yet to be done by all of us together. That's right. This is our closest challenge for near future. Guzel, thank you. So we've had the introduction. I would like to welcome Sergei Storchak, Deputy Minister of Finance, who oversees the financial literacy project. If you are ready, I will give you the floor. We have had an introductory speech with numbers for Russia as far as digitalization of financial services is concerned. What Güzel has said, well, people take digitalization positive. They understand the benefits of digitalization. At the same time, there has been an alarm. Almost 50% of the population does not see any risks around digitalization of financial services. What does the Ministry of Finance do and think about this to balance the situation, to balance the risks and the use of digital financial services? Sorry for being late. I stayed with the government for some time. That's why I came late. So most of the users of digital services in money transfer and other forms of interaction on financial markets do not feel the risks, do not see the risks. Some people absolutely love the around how easy digital services came to our life and how quickly transactions can be made and how much time it saves in our lives. But the situation is not so simple, and it's a bit dangerous. And the Financial Stability Council has begun to discuss this. This is one of the institutions or tools of the Group of 20 as far as financial security and financial stability is concerned, and at the same time financial inclusion. These two opposites are present everywhere. We want inclusion and we want security, and these two things are very closely linked. There is a conflict between the two, between inclusion and security. The Big 20 approached it by fragmenting financial markets, strong fragmentation of financial markets. We live in the times when the market is uniform. We have a uniform central depository. We use uniform technologies for accounting for financial assets. We apply uniform approaches to transactions and the use of financial information on transactions, the so-called SWIFT. At the same time, current digital technologies also affect the role of banks in these transactions. And the role of banks, if not diminished, it is kind of squeezed by digital companies that launch accounts of securities, accounting of securities. They launch mechanisms of transfer of money without the participation of banks. And this is what is being discussed and included in draft documents titled "Fragmentation of Financial Markets." Several aspects are considered. So there we are talking about fragmentation of the markets of financial regulation, which is a big concern of the regulator, being central banks or financial ministries. And the second part of the question was, what does the Ministry of Finance think and do? We certainly oversee the situation, and we look at it from two different perspectives. One perspective is about responsibility and authorities and responsibilities of the department which I chair, and the other perspective is related to Alexei Moiseev. It's about financial regulation and financial markets. Our goal, as far as financial education is concerned, is to include the information about the risks associated with digital financial services into the documents and literature that we distribute in Russia, in the regions of Russia. In the recent edition that we have distributed does not include this, but the next revision, next edition, will focus on the risks and opportunities provided by the digital technologies or online access to our tools, the government bonds for the population. Maybe at a different session, at a banking session, we could discuss this, because the banking agent have launched this tool without physical contact with a potential buyer. Those elements are very practical. They help us, they help people see and understand how the system of their own asset management will work when they add, for instance, government bonds to it. And they can also realize the risks that people assume as they start using those tools and technologies. Those technology solutions suggested by the banks will be under our oversight. As we agreed on week 1, sales will be, there'll be pilot sales to see how people can use the tool. So 1 week has passed, and by the end of the day we'll be able to provide some results. To that regard, we hope that our learning materials will provide the citizens with more information on the digital services, along with traditional tools that have been used all those years. Also, we will also organize another week of financial literacy, which will start in the end of this month. On the 31st of October, it will be dedicated to digital financial services. Why do we pay so much attention to this financial literacy week? Because it will have a very wide coverage, and we rely on Russian regions who ensure this coverage. When it's not about thousands of people, but hundreds of thousands of people trying to improve their financial literacy. So this is the end of my agenda today, but as I get new information from my department, I will share it with you. Thank you, Sergei Anatolievich. So the Minister of Finance does see those risks and takes a systemic approach as part of the Big 20 on the international level and domestically in Russia. Yes, the role of the regulator is also critical here, and the regulator has its own tools and approaches. Shall we smoothly move to Alexander Kolenko, representatives of the Bank of Russia? So, as I understand, the Bank of Russia also realizes those risks. So I read the news about central bank introducing new protection from cyber attacks, so that banks should keep track of the money flowing from the bank cards of their depositors and clients. So are you more positive or negative about this situation? Optimistic or pessimistic? Well, we always try to be positive, to take a positive perspective on any situation. Today we discuss financial literacy, but my colleagues wanted me to mention financial availability, which is quite logical, because these two things are very much related, and in our organization we realize how those two are linked. A few words about financial availability. Financial availability is growing and going towards digitalization. We can see that in our lives, in our smartphones, mobile applications offered by banks and other financial institutions. The central bank certainly pays a lot of attention to that too. We have at least 3 major projects at different levels of readiness, but we have made them public. It is biometric and remote identification, the system of fast payments, and the marketplace projects. Those 3 projects, as I listened to my colleagues, I was thinking what type of positive things they can deliver. Well, first of all, they will improve availability, especially to remote areas and people with limited physical abilities. The cost of financial services will go down. On the one hand, it looks very positive. It is obvious at the same time that as we enhance financial availability, and if we fail to improve financial literacy and digital financial literacy, then there will be a big question, do we do harm or good to the people? Maybe we're opening the Pandora box and there will be more ways to cheat the citizens. We understand how dangerous it might be. That's why financial literacy is very relevant. It is certainly a priority for us. We understand that teaching people digital financial services should be done through digital services. It's in the textbooks on financial literacy and the books published by the Ministry of Finance together with the Ministry of Education and Science. But it's not only through books. We should use the digital channels which are comfortable both for young people and for other people. It is important to use the channels that to which the people are already accustomed. It's an interesting slide. It's not my kid, but it looks very much like my son, my youngest son. Right after homework, I can see my son playing, using gadgets. When doing homework, he's very impatient. He wants to stop it, to complete it as soon as possible. But when he's playing, it says forever. Is it possible to fight it? No. Even if you prohibit something, there will be some workarounds that kids will find out. So if you can't fight it, try to lead it. Therefore, here is my next slide. It's not just official information. It's not that we're simply saying things, we're doing things. We offer online lessons, and we offer gamification to improve literacy. So cyber literacy is also critical, because this is where we are moving to. And this is what we're going to do. In near future, there will be another online exam for entrepreneurs. Also, a few words. We understand that the central bank alone will not be able to do that. We have created the Association for Development of Financial Literacy, and there we will support private initiatives in digitalization and gamification. And number 2, we'll develop volunteer movement. And no matter how many people we have in the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, and how much other government agencies support us, no matter how the private sector is active, and they contribute a lot to the financial literacy improvement. But we want to engage the population in the whole process. Well, it looks like my time is up. So only a few things in the end. So what comes next? We think, we talk to each other, we make up things. If financial literacy is not yet part of our life, but it will be soon, the AI development will move decision-making to the electronic form. There will be a lot of machine-to-machine interaction when machines will take decisions for us. To put it simply, how do we see the future? It will be half a joke that I'll describe it with. 30 years ago, a driver was closely related to the mechanic. So, in other words, a car driver should be a mechanic at the same time. Today, it's enough for us to know the traffic rules and understand how to drive a car. 10 years from now, the only thing that is needed is to get into a car and say where you want to go, and the car will drive. And another 10 years from now, you only need to get into a car and even don't say anything. Probably the car will read your mind. So this is the pace of digital development that we anticipate, and this pace may become even faster. Thank you. It's like in a famous movie, Moscow does not believe in tears. There'll be nothing. A short question to you. So this is the vision of the Bank of Russia. Digitalization will more and more rely on AI. A lot of chatbots will be used. Does financial literacy, is it necessary at all? Or should we more work on the financial products and make them more protected and less risk inherent? Education is a must, because this bright future, I don't know whether it's going to be bright or not. It's yet to be seen. But there are a lot of people who are prone to fraudulent actions, and they are always at a vigil, on a vigil. So we will see how AI will build into our lives and explain to people what it means and what risks will be associated with AI and how machines will behave. It's a futuristic perspective, but we should look into the future, trying to understand it. Let us go back to the present times. Yes, we do have a lot of interesting suggestions and proposals in Moscow, but it would be great to understand how things are in the regions. How do people in the regions understand digital channels? Do they use them? Let's take Tomsk region. This is one of our pilot regions. And even before the Ministry of Finance project, it was into financial literacy. In addition to Elena Kuzmina, head of financial literacy, she will speak up. We'll also have Mr. Vedenyov, head of the department, the deputy governor. So Elena will present today. They kind of changed places this time. Elena, welcome.
Good day, colleagues. I'm proud to present our project in Tomsk region. We've been working on financial literacy for 10 years, and it became a largely interagency project that covers the entire education system, and very many people are involved. So we used systemic approach of unity of financial literacy. It's a comprehensive project covering all areas. And our statistics is very similar to the one Kuzeli showed in the beginning. One might think that digital products are convenient. It offers greater access, more financial products. They're available in all regions, in all cities and towns. But there are problems related. In some remote areas, there are problems with internet connection, gadgets, and in many rural areas have no access to digital financial services. Young people indeed are very active users of financial services, and the penetration level of digital services in Tomsk is very high. But if we look at rural areas, the situation is different. People think differently of these services. And I agree with Alexander, said it should be work in 3 tracks: ease of access, ease of user friendliness, but people need to be prepared to use those new opportunities. When we talk about financial literacy in Tomsk region, we understand that we are at least a step behind the financial market. It's developing much faster than we in terms of our education products, in terms of our training materials. There are a number of factors to explain that. I will try to briefly outline them. The project of financial literacy in our region means the following. We have 20 municipalities with representatives in each of them. 330 schools introduced financial literacy courses, the curricula. 1,100 teachers and went through specific training with 33 partners, with volunteers, with the teachers, with consultants. Now we need to integrate it in a comprehensive mechanism. Recently, in August, we had a strategic session, so we polled teachers and we asked them, why are you not using them? They say, well, we don't feel relevant. We don't want to give those training sessions because we don't know whether we're going to be able to answer questions. What if my students ask me questions I will not be able to answer? So we try to support all the stakeholders, provide training materials. It's a challenge. We're now working on a digital platform. It's going to be a mobile app. It will contain a list of events, a schedule of events where you can where teachers would be able to upload their training materials and get consultation, whether they're relevant and up to date or not. Unfortunately, colleagues from Rospotrebnadzor are not with us today, but Dmitry will probably talk about it. It's important to protect consumer rights online. They're right. There are people that are excluded, but we need to look at reasons why. Why are people excluded? Why are they left behind? In our region, many are left behind not because they choose to. People in rural areas have to go digital because there are fewer branches are closed down. But internet connection is not good enough in some rural areas. Not everyone can afford a smartphone. So people are excluded for financial reasons or because of lack of literacy. I remember I was given a lecture and then there was an old lady who asked me a question, do you think I will live whatever's left to live without going digital? Is that possible? I don't like this attitude. So we've come up with a set of online training courses which is very convenient because you can spend money on creating those training courses, but you don't have to print those materials or deliver them. And then you can poll the audience, and depending on their preferences, they can go through tailor-made training. So we all know that it's not enough to know what to do. You need to do it. We all know sports is good for you, but not everyone does sports. But if people start practicing online, if they do online courses, it helps them psychologically start using financial services that in the beginning might seem confusing. A very interesting publication, an electronic journal that is digital, and we forwarded to our teachers. And by the way, we always targeted families. We didn't target people of certain age, we targeted families because we think that financial literacy is a family matter. You teach children, and children teach their parents teach their children and children teach their parents. So we decided we're going to make this journal targeted at families, and we're going to target children and youth separately, and then we're going to target teachers that need to know what's happening in this field and be confident that they're relevant, that they speak the same language with teachers. Another interesting product is what we call it bonds for people that live in Tomsk region, something we've been using for 17 years. Giselle spoke about difference between different age groups. So we did statistics, and most people that buy those bonds are 50 plus. 57 is the average age of a bondholder. So we launched online sale of these bonds, and I think that in itself is a step, because elderly people are used to bonds as an instrument, financial instrument, and as they start buying same old bonds online, it opens door to digital for them. By the way, you can buy those bonds here at the forum. So we try to make it as simple as possible, as easy to understand as possible. So we think we need to building such bridges for the elderly, especially those above 50, to help them migrate to digital. What else have we been doing? We recently launched a financial literacy lab for grown-ups, where you can come and use digital for the first time, get step-by-step instructions. So going from knowing from the stage I know to the stage I do. We spoke a lot about people that are excluded, left behind. So we launched this project online with nothing to fear when we're together. Young people visit elderly citizens twice a week. They're volunteers, and they help them use digital services, make payments online, use Gosuslugi website. This is what we're going to pilot this fall in October, and I think it will be very good in terms of building connections between generations and promoting literacy. As for monitoring, we see results of the project that's done by the Ministry of Finance. By the way, every school child went through training courses on financial literacy. I think that parents were even happier than children, because children are not quite aware of what that means, but parents really appreciate it. So it's an interesting families-oriented project, and we'll try to make sure we keep it comprehensive. We have a strong team with representatives of our universities. Some of them are present here. And it would be really good if we could continue working as a team as long as this national strategy is implemented. Thank you, Yelena. It's a very interesting presentation. A lot has been said about more difficult products. Can I ask a question while we're still on it? Shift to when you brought bonds online, did younger people start buying? Well, we just launched it. We don't have any statistics yet. We just launched it, but we think our clientele will be younger. We polled people beforehand, and why are they not buying bonds? And many were saying, we don't have time to go to branches and sign papers. If I were able to buy online, I probably would. Yeah, so next time we meet, we're going to compare, and we're going to see how going digital influence bond sales. Now I suggest we give the floor to representatives of financial institutions, because a lot has already been said about financial products, about what is done to promote them. Let us start giving the floor to Georgy Gorshkov, Deputy President, Chairman of the Management Board of the Post Bank. Yelena highlighted a very important problem. People are not always ready to use digital, and as banks close their branches in rural areas or leave regions, and large banks do that too, people are forced to go digital. But your business model is different. You are present in rural areas, you are present in regions. So how do you see the future? What is your vision? What is right? To promote digital, teach old ladies, or keep your branches? And where is the perfect balance between digital services and access to financial services for the most vulnerable? Bank of Russia is one of our very active partners. So could you share your rationale behind working on financial literacy? Thank you, Anna, for introduction. For the question, I will try to be very brief. Although it's hard to add anything new after the presentations that have already been made, but I'll try to bring my message across to the audience. Postbank has become one of the major drivers, catalysts of accessibility of financial services in rural areas. In just 3 years, we opened 18,000 branches, which is more than Sberbank has, and we did it in just 3 years. So when you ask why are we paying a lot of attention to financial literacy, it's easy. Tell me, are there any bots present in this room? Are they computers? No, they're all humans, and so are our clients. And people are social by definition. They need to communicate. They need to communicate about work, about their hobbies, about financial products. They need to communicate with other people. Therefore, when we measure communication channels by efficiency, in recent years we've seen that advertising doesn't work while recommendations do. So we try to be closer to people because people want to communicate and want to talk about things, especially if we're talking about financial stability of a household. What is financial literacy? What is literacy? Literacy in a general sense of the word is ability to read, write, but not understand or give assessment to what was written. Same, when we talk about financial literacy, we shouldn't focus only on number of textbooks or training courses. We need to understand our ultimate goal, and we share this ultimate goal. We need to achieve prosperity and of people as they use financial services. It's not about learning textbooks by heart, but rather about being protected, about not losing money because of lack of literacy. And common sense is what should guide you. Many like to joke about Russia and common sense, saying those two don't go too well together, but it's not that bad. The state doesn't always help citizens to use common sense in financial services. In what kind of transactions? In day-to-day payments, for instance. Commercial banks often give positive statistics. Indeed, share of cashless payments goes up. When we pay for our purchases, trips, we use our cards more often. That means banks need to invest in printing plastic cards, delivering them. But why are we talking about reduction of interbank commissions per card payments? Because we understand that it will reduce investment in payment infrastructure. If we don't mean just daily transactions, but lending, very often the credit sector is criticized, saying that vulnerable groups are less protected because of the low level of financial literacy, because they need money more often. But let me make a comparison. You probably all used pharmacy more than once in your lives. So we understand that you can buy lots of different pills, buy them without prescription, and get sick. So we understand to buy a car, you don't need a driver's license. You can even drive your car without a driver's license. Same with financial products. In lending, major problem is not the number of banks, not digitalization, not access to internet, not financial literacy even, but income level of population. Yesterday, one of the big suggestions that was made, Kostin made it, head of VTB, was to set minimum threshold of income level of people and raise income tax for people with income below a certain level. Regulator, Ministry of Finance did not really endorse it. And it doesn't at all work in the context of our discussion. Financial behavior is determined by financial literacy, not tax level. There should be taxes. People should participate. In budgeting, I understand that the money goes to regional budgets. Yeah, but you remember statistics. In the beginning of the session, many people are excluded, not by choice, but because they cannot afford to do. You can read as many textbooks as you like, but if you don't have enough money to buy food, you'll go take micro loan at 1% point a day because he's got nothing to eat. So make him as literate as you like, but he'd be forced to do that. So what is it we can call on actors, stakeholders to do? Banks should be responsible lenders, responsible financial institutions. They shouldn't provoke reckless behavior. The spread of financial instruments for the population is as broad as you can imagine. Your current account to get your pension, to micro loans, which we launched, and a few tens of thousands have been bought already. So it's a broad range for those that are online, offline. You're welcome. Come use it. But the main goal for us is to protect consumers from reckless financial decisions, whether it happens online or offline. So it takes common sense, it takes good education, and ability to answer the following question: how can I engage in this transaction safely and efficiently? This is why we work with consumers. This is why we work in rural areas, in small villages. That's why we opened 18,000 branches, to keep in touch with the Russian population. Let's not go deep into taxes, because this is well beyond the scope of our discussion. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck and spend all day talking about it. You said something very important. You spoke about responsible lending. I remember that maybe 10 years ago, was it? There was this bank that suggested to sign a code of responsible lending. Suggestion was addressed to Russian banks. No one signed. I think it was 10 years back. I think it was before the crisis. Yes, and it wasn't a Russian bank. A US regulator told them, look, guys, you have trouble. So my question is as follows. Could you comment on responsible lending level in Russia, in Russian bank? Has the situation changed? Is there progress?
I would like to express my appreciation to the regulator, because the regulator does its best to streamline the market of consumer loans, and it introduces various markers, PDN and others. This is the indicator of allowable burden. In the other areas, the government is lagging behind a little bit. Once we talk about the acceptable burden, for example, a person makes 100 coins a year. What consumer loan a consumer bank can give him or her? What would be a monthly payment? So we do have the credit history bureau already, but commercial banks in Georgia can receive the information online on the citizens' income. It can be done in Belarus, and they could do that several years ago already. In Russia, Russian commercial banks, should either guess or should they rely on the pension fund, and this is a complex way to achieve information through gosuslugi. Or they make us accept hard copies of income statements. Please provide us income statements of people, and most commercial banks will behave the way not to abuse consumers. No sound commercial bank is interested in making losses on delayed payments on consumer loans. We, as bankers, stop working not when we give a loan to the client, and when we get the money back from the client, and the client goes home happy. So we'll have all the speakers take their floor, and then we'll have the Q&A session. I've changed the order of the speakers. I would like to hear from the consumer organization. I would like Dmitry Yanin to speak up. Yes, thank you. This is a very good forum, and the first part was very open. We learned from Gref that he knows everything about people. And the credit history, I think Sberbank knows everything about its clients through AI. It knows income statements, money movement, and many others. Well, the public bank has no problem knowing information about its clients. But any consumer product is about quality, no matter whether it's a digital product or a regular product. On the market of financial services, we have a unique product, which, according to the World Bank, the AFC survey proved it, and as part of the Ministry of Finance project, 55% of clients who took loans, they received a low-quality product. The Russian Statistics Service tried to make it look more optimistic, saying it is 34%, not 55%. Imagine you come to a grocery store or to some department store, and you see that 34% of TV sets is of poor quality. And this is what our market is like. The regulators say that, well, actually, the regulators' opinions are different, but some part of the people in the regulators' authorities say that we should all become mechanics and fix our own cars. In other words, when we come to the bank, we should know everything. At the same time, we see technologies, if applied, you invest 1 ruble and get 100. It's not about banks. The price cap after this, the patriarch's speech in the State Duma. So the government cut the limit rate on consumer loans to 7.3 interest, and it was called a special product for the poorest part of the population. So 730% of annual interest. In the US, it is no more than 36%. India, the price cap is below 20%. Why do we have 730 or 365? And the regulator believes that 365 is fine and 730 is for the poor. 3 clicks, you get online without getting up from your desk. You make the money through microfinancial companies. You'll get the money without asking who you are. So what is the way out for those who are overcredited? How much does it cost to relieve yourself for this being overcredited? It is from 60,000 rubles. 60,000 rubles means a 2-month salary, an average 2-month salary in the region, in Tomsk, for instance. So the average wages in the regions are around 30,000 rubles. So 60,000 means 2 months without eating and drinking, just paying the debt. So the bankruptcy should not be so expensive. When you get an idea, it's a new idea of Oreshkin, for instance, before you sell the debt to collectors, please offer the client to buy, to recover the debt. The bankers give it to the press and say, Oreshkin doesn't want collectors to buy the debt, this is wrong, but then cancel the support of Usmanov. Each Russian person who goes bankrupt subsidizes Usmanov by publishing 2 announcements in a weekly newspaper, 10,000 rubles each. And I don't think anybody is reading those newspapers. So imagine a person who goes bankrupt is expected to pay 10,000 rubles for being bankrupt. This is a person who has nothing to live on. Now back to the regulator. It's a fantastic story. At the forum last year, this year, Andrei Makarov suggested that we do a follow-up. Remember the discussion on pseudo-insurance. You come to a bank and you immediately get insured against a Martian invasion. 23 billion was raised, 22 was paid in kickbacks for the sale of those insurance policies. It is all written in the report of the bank. So the commission was 1%. So 99% of the funds raised through this fake insurance remained in that financial institution. Disability, oncology, these contingencies are excluded from the insurance, but Martian invasion is included. And they say there is. This is the generator of the income of the banking industry, of the insurance industry. The insurance industry makes money by deceiving clients. In Great Britain, the regulator made insurance companies to return the money to the public within 10 years. So each person who filed a suit, he got reimbursed. So please don't make auto mechanics car mechanics of us. Yes, we do need financial literacy. It's better to read and understand what consumer protection means and how to achieve it. It is based on transparency, enforcement. When public banks, in their tariffs, establish penalties for delays, and banks say 18% of annual interest is not enough, let's call it late payment and demand 5,000 for being late in repaying the loan. And the regulator is hesitant. Should they go to that bank and just penalize the bank for 20,000 rubles? Is it worth while judicial procedures of 4 months to get the ruling for only 20,000 rubles? So the bank tariffs basically include penalties. So I would rather speak about the regulatory issues than financial literacy. A huge amount of our population has difficulties servicing their debts. 25% of the population encounters such difficulties. So those people need to be educated. Education and e-learning is good, but better think twice before you use one financial product or another. Thank you, Dmitry. If Alexander decides to respond, I will give him time later. But now, let us move on a little bit. We're not yet ready for debates. Now, let us discuss more sophisticated products. When we initiated the project, we talked about basic financial literacy. We spoke about the budget. So you first need to develop your budget before you make investment. Take care of your debts before you take a second step. And only then think about the future, about investment, about more complex financial products. I believe that people who take part in various programs and follow those rules, they ask us questions. What do I do? Bank deposits do not offer high interest rates. They more or less cover the inflation rate. But how can we multiply our financial assets? One example was government bonds. Another question would be to you. Well, there is a small percentage of people who invest. What can banks do to help people, to help their clients invest better? It is not easy to speak about such emotional and insightful talks. Let me first say the following. We live in a very interesting world. Financial education of consumers is an interesting subject. Yes, financial education in the digital era. We discussed technologies, but let us once again at how technologies affected us. Or what type of technologies do we use? And also, what helped change growth rates of the economy? What type of technologies? It's the internet and no more than that. We do discuss blockchain and artificial intelligence, but these technologies have not contributed to economic growth. As long as financial sector is concerned, yes, they may use such technologies. It may foster growth in the financial industry. But it's only the internet that truly changed the world. Let me give you a simple number. How to calculate the GDP and understand whether it's going to grow or not. Yes, productivity is important here. So how much GDP is generated per capita? So let's imagine a simple equation, A multiplied by B. Who are the major capital allocations? Where should the money go? It should go to where there is potential of population growth. And the second area is productivity growth. Following that logic, money should flow to Nigeria, India, Russia, and many other countries where there is potential for that, for this improvement. Let's have a look at the allocations or investments made by pension funds, not only by Russia, but European countries. Do they invest in those countries that I mentioned? No, they do not. So this is a simple example showing that what happens today is global transformation and a wave of financial intermediaries. The world is changing. Products are being created. If not created by big players, they're created by smaller players. There will be more of such financial products. And this may lead us to a total shift from traditional sources of growth. How is it related to financial literacy? Nothing will happen without financial literacy. My kids, who live in a new digitalization era and the gamification environment, they will hardly have 85% of deposits in their financial asset basket. At the same time, well, now that we live longer, without financial literacy of the holders of capital, we will not move any further. So two things, development of products, and this is what we do as professional financial intermediaries and players of the market, and financial literacy, which is an integral part of the process to reduce the costs of financial intermediaries, to delete the boundaries and bring the money where it is needed. So we have launched VTB My Investment platform, and every second we have about 100,000 active users. The turnover that they generate are huge, and they're growing each year. They have access to 5,000 different tools online, at a very clear price. So we do not longer live in times when we have no idea where we invested to and what the impacts of our investments are. Those days are gone.
If a client calls you and asks to buy at 99 and the market is at 98, I mean, those times are long gone. People that need capital need direct access to market, and discussions should take place. The stock exchange, but innovative technology and access of high-tech content to pre-IPO money of private persons. So debottlenecking holds great potential. Chatbot were instrumental in artificial intelligence. We launched the chatbot on investment based on artificial intelligence. And we're saying if you can service many people through voice aid, I don't think that's going to work, but chatbots are instrumental in replacing humans. And user-friendliness is key if you want to reach out to your clients. Robo-advisors have already been mentioned. This is second very practical line of work in our company. We launched first investment advisor on the market, and that's the second application of artificial intelligence. VR is a very interesting technology. An example of gamification has been given. We've killed a link with a bank by going digital. Now we need to rebuild the link. Virtual reality helps. Programs such as TikTok encourage us to change, and this will allow to win consumers back, and there's no alternative, which is clear. Teaching is important, but you need to speak the same language, making sure people understand. Customers don't understand the language of investors. We're relaunching our investor school of VTB. It will be going live next week. Hope you'll find time to. Is it open? Yeah, it's going to be on VTB website. If you go to investments, you will see a link to investor school, and it's very simple. Be able to get comprehensive training. I used to use the rule of 3 Ps, not because my last name is Potapov. It should be просто simple, прозрачно, transparent, and personalized. So I try to stick to this rule. And I don't believe that there'll be an ecosystem uniting Apple, Android, or one browser online. No one remembers Netscape or Internet Explorer browsers any longer, and the market is really fluid. It changes very rapidly. So we need to understand which ecosystems our clients prefer, where they feel comfortable, where they're interested. IP technologies were invented long ago. And as for artificial intelligence, that was invented back in the 80s. Someone from the academia told me that. And then, now suddenly, people are getting interested. ABI technologies, those have been used for a long time, but for some reason no one's interested, at least not in our country. So we are, I think, the first bank that used this technology and allowed to invest in digital channels of our partners. Our first project was a joint project with RBC Code, where you could stay on RBC website, get information, read the news. It's interesting information and important information on all the industries. You could immediately invest on demand. So that was the first project we did. And as for the second project, Georgi spoke about it already. It was very interesting and very useful for the population, something we did together with the Post Bank, where you can use mobile bank of Post Bank and send just 2 SMSs. We strive to make it 1, but so far unsuccessfully because of Russian legislation. So 2 SMSs are enough to take a microloan, and you see schedule of payments. It's really convenient, but more is to come. And I think this is what the future holds. We need to focus on that, on financial literacy, because there's no alternative. Our products should be not just simple, they should be transparent and personalized. And a lot remains to be done. We're the largest company investing in the Russian market. We're now above 2 trillion. The statistics you see on this slide dates back to June. So that is impressive. Thank you, Vladimir. I have a quick question you can answer briefly. You mentioned transparency and risks. These two are related. Could you comment on how you help your clients to manage their risks? We think it should all be client based. We've had lots of discussions with central bank and other stakeholders. We think we need to look at all the assets a client has. And we need to make them tailor-made and personalized. So before we tell our client, you need asset management, or you need an advisor, or you need brokerage, so before we do that, we need to do risk assessment and profiling and understand what it is this person needs. So I'm not saying we should limit him, because he can be interested in all the three products. Let's take an example. Imagine I work for a large metallurgical company. I clearly have confidence in shares of this factory. Why would I pay an advisor, or I was given shares as part of the option program, or I just have confidence in this factory, so I want to own some shares? So a broker can hold a number of shares and then equity, and depending on whether a person is willing to invest in the investment market, you can either hold a portfolio or specific shares of this particular factory. Because if you can have a pool of high-quality consultants that would be able to service mass market, it would be perfect, but that's not possible. So after we've done profiling, we suggest a contract of investment consulting. We have very interesting discussions with Sergei Anatolievich whether this robo-advisor service should be pro bono or chargeable, and then depending on the outcome of this discussion, a robo-advisor can be available that would not allow an investor to shape a portfolio that would be in areas beyond his area of competence. Do you indicate risks for your tailor-made products? We do. Colleagues, we're running out of time, but if I may, we started 10 minutes late. Can we stay 10 minutes behind, because now it's lunchtime. I hope there's enough food for everyone. So how about we do a quick Q&A? Don't forget to introduce yourselves. I'm a teacher from Moscow. I teach math, economics, and financial literacy. It's such a shame no one from the Ministry of Education is present in this panel, because someone needs to educate the elderly, the middle-aged, and it should be up to men in financial institutions, but you should teach financial literacy to children, at least for them to. What is your question? My question, why is there no one from the Ministry of Education present here? And why there isn't a single question of financial literacy? Neither in math nor in other disciplines. Alexander wanted to comment, but let me answer first. The Ministry of Education recently participated in a press conference we did on a toolkit we published as for why social sciences schools don't cover this subject. Well, they do to an extent, but it's very limited. We tried together with the Central Bank of Russia to discuss with the Ministry of Education. Oh, by the way, someone is telling me there is someone from the Ministry of Education in this room, and I'm sure she'd be happy to add. So we're adding those elements in the curriculum, but I want to mention again that we published training materials. 11 million of them were sent to Russian regions for children to study. We've also developed a set of modules, training modules for math, social sciences, society sciences. So we have a roadmap we're implementing. You're right, Anna, any change takes time. Gradual change. We'll work with colleagues from the Ministry of Finance, Central Bank. They've made suggestions about change that needs to be made in federal education standards. We're having discussions, we're having meetings of working groups, and change is really happening. Ministry of Education also endorsed the initiative. Ministry of Education understands how important financial literacy is. So change is introduced at all levels, from preschool to higher education. But it will, and this work started long ago, but it will take time. It's in demand, but it will take more than a day. You need to develop new curricula, and you can't do that in a year's time. Our strategy will be implemented until the year 2024. So change will gradually be happening. All training materials are available on our website, so please download them and give your comments. If I may, in August, we sent a letter to all regional educational establishments, informing them about a set of training materials that were developed by the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank, and they were tasked to inform all schools and all education establishments. Well, unfortunately, Moscow was not willing and refused to use these training materials. Alexander, very briefly. Well, first, such a pleasure to see true teachers, a math teacher at a forum like that. This was something unthinkable just 3 years back. We used to operate in this echo chamber, the Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, regulators. But it's amazing that teachers attend such meetings. And I want to thank representative of the Ministry of Education. And I want to reaffirm that indeed a lot is done in this direction. Tomorrow at the Financial Literacy Forum, Moscow, I will speak with colleagues from Moscow and convey your message. But trust me, a lot has been done. The Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, the Ministry of Education are making a lot of effort, and I hope we'll achieve tangible progress soon. I want to comment on what Dmitry said. One official comment on behalf of the Central Bank. I represent a division that's in charge of financial literacy. So to answer those critical comments that were made by Dmitry, we need a lawyer who would professionally work on those subjects. I cannot comment formally, please don't get me wrong, but informally, not as representative of Central Bank, but in my personal capacity, since I started working on financial literacy long before I joined Central Bank. I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I know, a lot has been done by the regulator. Higher penalties, new standards, many other measures, test purchases, spy inspections. So problems are there, but they're being dealt with. I don't want to go deep into a discussion. I'm not a lawyer, but, and again, this is my professional opinion. I speak in my personal capacity. Regulator might try hard as he might, but unless living standards of people go up, until income level goes up, we will not be able to deal with the problem. These are dark waters, Alexander. I understand, but this is true. Someone has to say it. Because it's up to people to make decisions. And it's people we need to inform and help them protect themselves. And I disagree with you, Dmitry. Central bank needs to work on financial literacy. Oh, please set the price cap first. Don't make poor even poorer. If you land at 730%, it's not going to make you poor. It's not going to make you rich. I know, we all know what the problem is. You know, people that make money and then flee the country. But do what your colleagues do. Just do it fast. Well, I wanted to end on a more optimistic note. And time is running out. I think we can always find reasons to criticize regulators, all stakeholders, but it's work in progress. We need to remember achievements, positive results. It's going to be a long road from the consumer point of view. Well, I agree that, indeed, financial services are developing so rapidly that it's hard for regulators, for us that work in education, to catch up. You know, you need to run twice as fast to stay where you are. So this is what we all need to do. We can learn from examples of other countries that are introducing new measures to protect consumers, try to make them more efficient. And financial literacy is not a cure at all, but it's important. But so is regulation, human rights protection. Mikhail Orlov, unfortunately, apologized because he had to leave. Had an important meeting to attend, but it's important to continue this discussion. We had on stage representatives of financial institutions, Ministry of Finance, regions, consumers, consumer right protection organizations. All of that is important. So we'll continue working. I want to thank participants, our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.